The morning sun peeked through the blinds of Riverside Diner, casting long strips of light across the checkered floor. Tamara Johnson had been on her feet since 5:30, her back already aching as she balanced 3 plates along her arm. The breakfast rush was in full swing, and she hadn't had a chance to even sip the coffee she'd poured herself an hour ago. It sat cold on the counter now, forgotten like so many of her small comforts these days. "Order up," Roy, the cook, called from the kitchen window, his voice barely rising above the chatter of customers and the clinking of silverware. Tamara glanced at the new ticket while setting down plates of pancakes at table 4. She offered a warm smile to the young family seated there, mom, dad, and 2 kids with syrup already smeared across their cheeks. "Can I get y'all anything else?" she asked, tucking a stray curl back into her tight bun. "We're all good, thank you," the father replied, already cutting his son's pancakes into bite-sized pieces. Tamara nodded and moved swiftly back to the pickup counter. Her feet hurt in the sensible black shoes she'd bought second-hand last year. The soles were wearing thin, but new shoes weren't in the budget. Not with her mother's medical bills piling up and this month's rent still short by $200. She grabbed the fresh order, eggs over easy with a side of bacon, and scanned the diner for table 12. As she weaved between tables, she caught sight of her coworker Denise pointing frantically toward the door. Tamara followed her gaze, nearly stumbling when she saw who had just walked in. The man stood quietly by the "Please wait to be seated" sign, a baseball cap pulled low over his forehead and dark sunglasses hiding his eyes despite the early hour. He wore a simple black t-shirt and jeans, nothing flashy. But Tamara would have recognized that face anywhere. It was Keanu Reeves. Her heart did a little jump in her chest. She'd watched The Matrix at least 20 times, and John Wick had become her go-to movie when life felt too heavy. There was something about his characters, always fighting against impossible odds, that gave her hope during the hardest days. Snapping back to reality, she delivered the eggs to table 12 and headed toward the host stand where Keanu still waited. Denise was closer but seemed frozen in place, mouth slightly open. "I've got it," Tamara whispered to her as she passed. Approaching the actor, she put on her professional smile, not too eager, not too familiar. Celebrities occasionally stopped by when filming in the area, and the diner had an unspoken policy: treat them like regular folks. That's why they came here, after all, to escape the spotlight for a little while. "Good morning," she said, grabbing a menu from the stand. "Just one today?" He removed his sunglasses, revealing those kind eyes she'd seen on screen so many times. Up close, they looked tired but gentle. "Yes, just me," he replied with that distinctive voice, slightly raspy and soft-spoken. "Somewhere quiet would be nice, if possible." Tamara nodded, glancing around the busy diner. "Follow me. I've got just the spot." She led him to booth 7 in the corner, partially hidden by a large potted plant and away from the windows. It was where the owner, Mr. Henderson, usually sat to do paperwork, but he wasn't coming in until later. "This work for you?" she asked. Keanu slid into the booth and removed his cap, running a hand through his slightly messy dark hair. "Perfect, thank you." Tamara placed the menu before him, working hard to keep her hands steady. "Can I start you off with some coffee?" "That would be great," he said, offering a small smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. As she walked away to get the coffee pot, she felt a buzzing in her apron pocket. Her phone. She wasn't supposed to keep it on her during shifts, but with her mother's health being what it was, Mr. Henderson made an exception. At the coffee station, Tamara quickly checked the notification. It was an email from her landlord with the subject line, "Final notice." Her stomach dropped as she skimmed the message. If the remaining rent wasn't paid by Friday, eviction proceedings would begin. The coffee pot nearly slipped from her hand as she set it down to steady herself against the counter. 3 days. She had 3 days to come up with $200 she didn't have. "You okay, honey?" asked Gloria, the senior waitress who'd been at Riverside since before Tamara was born. Her lined face creased with concern beneath her gray-streaked hair. "I'm fine," Tamara lied, forcing a smile. "Just a little dizzy for a second there." Gloria looked unconvinced but didn't push. "Table 9 needs their check when you get a chance." Tamara nodded, pocketing her phone and grabbing a fresh mug for Keanu's coffee. She couldn't afford to lose focus now, not during the busy shift, and certainly not while serving someone who might leave a decent tip. Every dollar counted. By the time she returned to booth 7, Keanu had opened what looked like a script on the table, reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up when she approached, closing the document slightly. "Here's your coffee," she said, placing down the mug. "Have you decided what you'd like to eat, or do you need a few more minutes?" He closed the script completely. "What do you recommend?" "I'm not really a fancy breakfast person." The question surprised her. Most customers just ordered without asking for her opinion, as if she were just a walking notepad rather than someone who'd eaten practically everything on the menu over the years. "Well," she began, "Roy makes the best scrambled eggs in town. Nice and fluffy, not too dry. I usually have them with wheat toast and a side of avocado when I can treat myself." Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds perfect. I'll have that," Tamara jotted down his order. "Coming right up." As she turned to leave, her foot caught on an uneven floorboard, the same one Mr. Henderson had promised to fix months ago. She stumbled, catching herself before falling but sending her order pad sliding across the floor. Before she could move to retrieve it, Keanu was out of his seat, picking it up and handing it back to her. "Thank you," she said, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "That floorboard's been trying to take me down for years now." He smiled. A real smile this time, not the polite one from earlier. "The floors are always plotting something, aren't they?" The small joke made her laugh, easing her embarrassment. "Absolutely. The tile in my apartment bathroom is in a conspiracy with my alarm clock, both trying to make mornings as difficult as possible." After placing his order with Roy, Tamara continued her rounds, refilling coffees and taking orders. Every few minutes her eyes would drift to booth 7, where Keanu sat quietly reading, occasionally making notes in the margins of his script. During a brief lull, she found herself drawn back to his table, coffee pot in hand. "Refill," she offered. He nodded, sliding his mug toward her. As she poured, he said, "You mentioned your apartment. Have you lived in this area long?" The question seemed born of genuine curiosity rather than empty small talk. That was the thing about busy diners. Sometimes the briefest conversations with strangers felt more real than long talks with people you knew. "All my life," she answered. "Grew up about 20 minutes from here. Moved to my current place 5 years ago to be closer to my mom after she got sick." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Something about his attentive gaze made it easy to share more than she'd intended. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said, his voice carrying a weight that suggested he understood loss. "That must be difficult." Tamara shrugged, trying to keep it light. "It's life, you know. You deal with what comes." She glanced at his script. "What brings you to our little corner of nowhere?" "Filming something nearby?" He nodded. "Just started production last week. It's a small independent film. Nothing fancy. Those are often the best ones," she said, then added with a small grin. "Though I did watch all 3 John Wick movies in one night last year when my power was about to be shut off, and I wanted to make the most of my electricity." That earned another genuine laugh from him. "Not the viewing circumstance I'd hoped for, but I'm flattered." Before they could continue, a large party entered the diner, the bell above the door jingling frantically as 8 people squeezed through. Tamara glanced over her shoulder and sighed. "Duty calls," she said. "Your food should be up soon." As the morning progressed, Tamara found herself juggling more tables than usual. Denise had disappeared into the bathroom 20 minutes ago, texting that she was sick. With the new large party and the regular breakfast crowd, Tamara barely had time to deliver Keanu's food before being pulled in 3 different directions. When she finally circled back to check on him, he was nearly finished with his meal. "How was everything?" she asked, already gathering his empty mug. "Exactly what I needed," he replied. "You were right about the eggs." Tamara smiled, feeling an unexpected burst of pride at the simple acknowledgement. "Can I get you anything else?" "Just the check, please." She nodded and went to print his bill. As she slid it onto his table, her phone buzzed again in her pocket. This time it was a text from her mother's caregiver. Medication refill denied by insurance again. "They're saying we need prior authorization. What should I do?" Tamara closed her eyes briefly, trying to push down the wave of anxiety. She'd have to call the insurance company during her break, go through the same exhausting process she went through last month. Meanwhile, her mother's pain would worsen without her medication. When she returned, as she began to count out change, he spoke up. "Keep it," he said simply. The breakfast was great. Tamara looked down at the bills. The tip was generous, not extravagant in a showy way, but considerably more than the standard 15 or 20%. It would help with groceries this week, though not enough to make a dent in the rent shortage. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "I hope you have a good day on set." As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Actually," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket, "I wanted to give you this." He held out a small white card, plain with no markings visible from where she stood. Tamara took it, confused. "What's this?" "Just something that might help," he said quietly. "With your mom and whatever else you're dealing with. No pressure." Before she could ask more questions, the bell above the door chimed again as a new customer entered. At the same time, Gloria called from across the diner. "Tamara! Table 3 is asking for their check." Keanu smiled at her, understanding the pull of her responsibilities. "I should get going anyway. Thanks for the recommendation." He slid out of the booth, leaving Tamara standing there with the mysterious card in her hand and questions on her lips. Tamara slipped the small white card into her apron pocket as she hurried to table 3 with their check. Her fingers brushed against it throughout her shift, a constant reminder of the strange morning. What could Keanu Reeves possibly have given her? And what did he mean by something that might help? The rest of the morning passed in a blur of coffee refills, order tickets, and the rhythmic clatter of plates. By the time the lunch crowd started trickling in, Tamara's feet were screaming in protest, but her tip jar had grown promisingly heavy. Still, she knew it wouldn't be enough for both the rent and her mother's medication. "Taking my break," she called to Gloria as the rush finally slowed around 2 o'clock. Gloria waved her off. "Take 15 instead of 10 today. You've been running nonstop since Denise bailed." Tamara didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed her worn denim jacket from the staff room hook, pulled out a slightly squashed granola bar from her bag, and pushed through the back door into the alley behind the diner. The cool autumn air hit her face, a welcome relief after hours in the stuffy diner. She sank onto an upturned milk crate, the unofficial break spot for Riverside employees, and took a deep breath. Only then did she reach into her apron pocket and pull out the card Keanu had given her. It was simple but expensive looking, made of thick, cream-colored paper with a subtle texture. One side was blank. She flipped it over, expecting to find a business card for a movie production company or talent agency. Instead, there was just a phone number and an email address. No name, no title, no company logo. Below the contact information, written in neat handwriting with a blue pen, was a note. Reference code KR217. Sometimes the universe sends help in unexpected ways. Tamara stared at the message, turning it over in her mind. Was this some kind of celebrity charity thing, or something else entirely? She thought about Keanu's words. "With your mom and whatever else you're dealing with." How had he known her mother's illness was just one of many problems? She pulled out her phone, hesitating with her thumb over the number. What if this was just some weird Hollywood thing? Or worse, what if it was inappropriate somehow? But the memory of Keanu's genuine eyes and soft-spoken manner didn't fit with anything suspicious. Before she could change her mind, she dialed the number. It rang 3 times before a woman answered. "Hello, Private Beneficiary Office. How may I help you?" The voice was professional but warm. Tamara cleared her throat. I was given this number today. I have a reference code. KR217. There was a pause and the sound of typing. "Yes, I have that here. May I ask your name?" "Tamara Johnson," more typing. "And you received this card today, Ms. Johnson?" "Yes, just a few hours ago." "Perfect." The woman's tone shifted slightly, becoming more personable. "My name is Diane, and I'm a facilitator with the Private Beneficiary Foundation. We're a charitable organization that works with anonymous donors to provide assistance to individuals facing challenging circumstances." Tamara's heart began to beat faster. "I don't understand. What kind of assistance?" "That depends on your specific situation," Diane explained. "Our donors sometimes encounter people they believe could use support. They provide us with basic information and a donation amount, and we work directly with the beneficiaries, people like you, to distribute those funds most effectively." Tamara's legs felt suddenly weak, and she was grateful to be sitting. "Are you saying Keanu Reeves wants to give me money?" There was a slight chuckle on the other end. "We maintain strict confidentiality about our donors, Ms. Johnson. I can neither confirm nor deny the identity of the person who referred you to us. What I can tell you is that someone has designated a sum to assist you, particularly with medical expenses and housing security. Tamara's free hand flew to her mouth. Those were exactly the two things weighing heaviest on her mind. How would you know about that? She whispered. The donor provided some basic information, Diane said gently. They mentioned your mother's health challenges, and that you might be facing housing difficulties. Tamara thought back to her brief conversation with Keanu. She had mentioned her mother, being sick and moving to be closer to her, but nothing about money troubles or rent. Yet somehow he had read between the lines. What happens now? Tamara asked, her voice trembling slightly. That's up to you, Diane replied. If you're comfortable proceeding, I'll need to verify some information and discuss how these funds might best serve your needs. We could set up a proper call when you have more time. Tamara glanced at her watch. She had only 3 minutes left on her break. I'm at work now, but I get off at 7. Could we talk then? Of course. I'll make a note to expect your call. And Ms. Johnson, yes? Many people feel hesitant or proud in these situations. Please know that our donors choose recipients carefully. This isn't random charity. It's one human recognizing the value and potential in another. When Tamara hung up the phone, her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. She sat frozen on the milk crate, trying to process what had just happened. It felt surreal, like something from one of those heartwarming videos people shared online, not something that happened in real life. Not to her. The back door swung open, making her jump. Break's over, honey, Gloria called. Got a 4-top that just sat in your section. Tamara nodded, quickly wiping away the moisture that had gathered in her eyes without her noticing. She tucked the card carefully back into her pocket and followed Gloria inside, moving on autopilot. For the rest of her shift, Tamara moved through the diner like someone in a dream. She smiled at customers, took orders, delivered food, all while her mind raced with questions and possibilities. How much money was involved? Would it be enough to cover her mother's medication? The rent, both? You seem different, Gloria commented as they restocked napkin dispensers during the mid-afternoon lull. Something happened on your break? Tamara hesitated. It felt too fragile to share, like speaking it aloud might make it disappear. Just got some potentially good news. Nothing certain yet? Gloria nodded, not pushing further. After 40 years of waitressing, she respected the privacy of both customers and coworkers. Well, whatever it is has put some color back in your cheeks. That's nice to see. At 6:30, with the dinner rush well underway, Mr. Henderson arrived for his evening check-in. He was a small man with a perpetually worried expression. The weight of running a struggling diner in the age of chain restaurants etched into the lines around his eyes. Tamara, he called from near the register. Got a minute? Her stomach clenched. Conversations with the boss rarely brought good news these days, not with food costs rising and customer numbers dropping. Yes, Mr. Henderson? She asked, approaching the counter. He lowered his voice. Got a strange call today. Someone asking about you. Her heart skipped. About me? Some foundation or other. Wanted to verify your employment here. He eyed her curiously. Everything okay? I think so, she said carefully. Did they say what it was about? He shook his head. Just employment verification. Said you'd applied for some kind of assistance program. He paused. You know, if you're having money troubles, you could have asked for more hours. The concern in his voice touched her. Despite his gruff exterior, Mr. Henderson tried to take care of his staff in the limited ways he could. It's not that, she assured him. Well, not just that. It's complicated, but I think it might be something good. He seemed relieved. All right then. Just checking. As 7 o'clock approached, Tamara found herself glancing at the clock every few minutes. When it finally came time to clock out, she hurried through her closing duties, barely noticing Gloria's knowing smile as she rushed to the staff room to retrieve her belongings. Outside, the evening air had grown chilly. Tamara pulled her jacket tighter as she walked to the bus stop, the card now transferred to her jeans pocket where her fingers could still brush against it reassuringly. She had a 20-minute bus ride to her apartment, plenty of time to make the call. As she settled onto the hard plastic seat of the nearly empty bus, she pulled out her phone and the car. Diane answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting for the call. Hello, Miss Johnson. I'm glad you called back. I have some time now, Tamara said, her voice steadier than she expected. Excellent. I've prepared some information based on what we know of your situation. First, could you tell me a bit about your mother's medical needs? For the next 15 minutes, as the bus rumbled through familiar streets, Tamara found herself opening up to this stranger about the challenges of the past few years. Her mother's multiple sclerosis diagnosis, the mounting medical bills, the night classes she'd been taking to get her nursing degree, now on hold because she couldn't afford the tuition. Diane listened patiently, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When Tamara mentioned the eviction notice, there was a pause. How much do you need to avoid eviction? Diane asked. $200 by Friday, Tamara replied. The admission's still painful despite everything. And the full month's rent is? $850, Tamara heard typing on the other end. Then Diane cleared her throat slightly before continuing. Ms. Johnson, I've been authorized to inform you that our donor has allocated a grant in your name. The foundation will cover your rent for 6 months, retroactive to this month, which addresses your immediate eviction concern. Additionally, we'll establish a medical expense account for your mother's needs and provide a stipend to allow you to re-enroll in your nursing program. The bus jolted to a stop, but Tamara barely noticed. She must have misheard. I'm sorry, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Could you repeat that? Certainly. There was a gentle understanding in Diane's voice. The donor has provided funds to cover your housing for 6 months. Your mother's medical expenses not covered by insurance, and your educational cost to complete your nursing degree. Tamara's vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. But why? Why would he do this for a stranger? As I mentioned earlier, I can't confirm the identity of the donor, Diane said diplomatically. But I can tell you that all of our donors share a common belief, that sometimes a single act of kindness at the right moment can change the trajectory of someone's life. The bus approached Tamara's stop. She pulled the cord mechanically, still in shock. I don't know what to say, she managed as she stood, holding the handrail to steady herself. You don't need to say anything, Diane replied. Just check your email tomorrow morning for the formal documentation and next steps. And Tamara, yes? The donor included a personal message. The world needs more nurses who understand compassion firsthand. Tamara stepped off the bus in a daze, nearly missing her stop as her mind reeled from the conversation with Diane. The evening air felt different somehow, lighter against her skin despite the autumn chill. She walked the 3 blocks to her apartment building on autopilot, barely noticing the familiar potholes in the sidewalk that she usually navigated with practiced steps. The building looked the same as it had that morning. Faded brick, rusting fire escape, the flickering exterior light that the landlord had promised to fix months ago. But now, instead of seeing it as the place she might be forced to leave in 3 days, she saw it as the home she could keep for at least 6 more months. 6 months. The thought made her breath catch. 6 months without worrying about rent. 6 months to focus on her mother and school. 6 months that had appeared out of nowhere, because a famous actor had decided to change her life over breakfast. Her key stuck in the lock, as it always did, requiring the familiar jiggle and lift motion she'd perfected over years. Inside, the apartment was quiet except for the low murmur of the television from her mother's bedroom. Mom, she called softly, setting her bag down on the kitchen counter. I'm home. Lisa Johnson had once been a force of nature, a high school English teacher known for her booming laugh and boundless energy. Now she spent most days in bed or in her wheelchair, the aggressive progression of her MS having stolen her mobility, but not her sharp mind or warm smile. In here, baby, her mother called back. Come tell me about your day. Tamara hesitated in the hallway, one hand on the wall to steady herself. How could she possibly explain what had happened? It sounded ridiculous even in her own head. She took a deep breath and pushed open her mother's bedroom door. Lisa was propped up against her pillows, a book open in her lap and reading glasses perched on her nose. Her once wild curls, so like Tamara's own, were now cut short for easier care, sprinkled liberally with gray at the temples. There you are, Lisa said, marking her page and setting the book aside. Her smile faded as she took in Tamara's expression. What's wrong? Did something happen at work? Tamara moved to sit on the edge of the bed, carefully avoiding the tangle of blankets around her mother's legs. Something happened, but it's not bad. It's actually, I don't even know how to explain it. Lisa reached for her daughter's hand. Just start at the beginning, so Tamara did. She told her mother about the morning rush, about Keanu Reeves walking into the diner, about their brief conversation and the card he'd given her. As she spoke, her mother's eyes grew wider. I called the number on my break, Tamara continued, her voice still unsteady with disbelief. This woman, Diane, she works for some kind of private foundation. And she told me. She paused, swallowing hard against the lump forming in her throat. Told you what? Lisa prompted gently. That they're going to pay our rent for 6 months. And your medical expenses, and my tuition to finish nursing school. The words tumbled out in a rush, as if saying them quickly might make them more believable. Lisa's hand tightened around Tamara's. For a moment she said nothing, her expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and cautious hope. Are you sure this is real? She finally asked. There are so many scams out there. It was the same question Tamara had been asking herself on the bus ride home. I think so. They already called Mr. Henderson to verify I work at the diner. And the woman I spoke to knew things about us that I hadn't told anyone. Like what? That we were behind on rent. That I was taking nursing classes. Details I never mentioned to him. Tamara pulled the card from her pocket and handed it to her mother. It seems legitimate. The foundation has a website. I checked it on the bus. Lisa examined the card, running her fingers over the handwritten note. KR 217, she read aloud. KR for Keanu Reeves? I guess so, Tamara said. The woman, Diane, wouldn't confirm it was him. Said they keep donors confidential. Lisa handed the card back, her eyes suddenly glassy with tears. After everything we've been through? Why would a stranger do this for us? Tamara shook her head at a loss for words. I don't know. He just saw something, I guess, in me, or in our situation. She remembered the last thing Diane had said. The world needs more nurses who understand compassion firsthand. For several minutes, they sat in silence, the magnitude of what had happened settling over them like a blanket. It was Lisa who finally broke the quiet. Did I ever tell you about the time my car broke down on that trip to Chicago? She asked, shifting slightly against her pillows. Before you were born, when I was teaching at Lincoln High? Tamara shook her head. Her mother had been a storyteller all her life, but this was one she hadn't heard. I was driving up to visit my college roommate. Lisa began. About an hour outside the city, my old Buick just died. Middle of nowhere, no cell phones back then. I was stranded on the shoulder and it was starting to get dark. She paused, adjusting her position with a wince that didn't escape Tamara's notice. The pain medication was wearing off. Tamara made a mental note to get her mother's pills after the story. This pickup truck pulls over. Lisa continued. Big guy gets out, tattoos, beard, looked like he could bench press my car. I was terrified. But he just asked what was wrong. Then spent 45 minutes fixing my alternator. Wouldn't take a dime for his help, really? Tamara asked, trying to picture her usually cautious mother accepting help from a stranger. Lisa nodded. He told me something I've never forgotten. He said, the kindness of strangers isn't random. It's the universe's way of reminding us we're all connected. She tapped the card in Tamara's hand. Sometimes the universe sends help in unexpected ways. Almost the same words. Tamara looked down at the card, the message taking on new meaning. So you think I should accept this? I think, Lisa said carefully, that pride is a luxury we can't afford right now, and that someday when you're a nurse and I'm back on my feet, we'll find ways to pay it forward. Tamara felt something release in her chest, a tension she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her mother was right. This wasn't about charity or handouts. It was about connection, about one human recognizing the struggle of another and reaching out a hand. I'm supposed to check my email in the morning, she said. For the next steps. Lisa smiled, the lines around her eyes crinkling. Then that's what we'll do. But right now, I think this calls for a celebration. She gestured toward the small refrigerator in the corner of the room. A necessity added when getting to the kitchen became too difficult on bad days. There might be a bottle of sparkling cider in there from my birthday. As Tamara retrieved the cider and searched for clean glasses in the kitchen, her phone pinged with a text. It was Gloria from the diner. Mr. H said someone's helping you out. Don't know the details, but wanted to say I'm happy for you. You deserve a break, honey. Tamara leaned against the counter, overwhelmed by the events of the day. Just 12 hours ago, she'd been staring at an eviction notice. wondering how she'd keep a roof over their heads. Now she had breathing room, a chance to get back on track, all because a famous actor had ordered breakfast and taken the time to really see the person serving his food. When she returned to her mother's room with 2 mismatched glasses and the cider, she found Lisa had pulled out an old photo album. "I was thinking," Lisa said as Tamara poured the cider, "about all the times people helped us when you were growing up. Remember Mrs. Washington next door who watched you after school when I had faculty meetings? Or Coach Wilson, who got you those basketball shoes when I couldn't afford them?" Tamara nodded, settling beside her mother on the bed. The album was open to pictures from her high school graduation. Tamara in her cap and gown, Lisa standing proudly beside her with a cane. The early symptoms of MS already affecting her balance but not her joy. "We've always been surrounded by good people," Lisa continued. "This is just another link in that chain." They sipped their cider and flipped through memories. Tamara's first day of school, Lisa's classroom full of students, the small house they'd owned before the medical bills forced them to downsize. With each page, Tamara began to see a pattern she hadn't noticed before. The community that had formed around them in times of need, offering support in ways both large and small. "What will you do first?" Lisa asked, closing the album as they reached the end. "With this opportunity?" Tamara considered the question. "Call the nursing program tomorrow. See what I need to do to re-enroll for the spring semester. And then," she hesitated, a thought forming, "I think I want to find out where they're filming. To thank him personally." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "You think they'll let you anywhere near a movie set?" "Probably not," Tamara admitted. "But I could write a letter maybe. Send it through the foundation." She twisted her glass in her hands. "It just feels important to let him know what this means to us." Later that night, after helping her mother with her evening routine, medication, stretches, transfer to the bathroom and back, Tamara sat at their small kitchen table with her laptop open. The ancient computer took several minutes to boot up. The fan whirring loudly in the quiet apartment, she opened a blank document and began to type, hesitantly at first, then with growing certainty. "Dear Mr. Reeves, today you came into the Riverside Diner where I work, and in the space of a brief conversation and a simple meal, you changed the course of my life. I still don't understand fully why you chose to help me, but I wanted you to know what your kindness means." The words flowed more easily than she expected, filling the screen with gratitude and promises, not just to him, but to herself and to others she might one day be able to help. When she finished, it was past midnight. She saved the letter, knowing she might never find a way to deliver it, but feeling better for having written it. As she got ready for bed, her phone pinged with an email notification. It was from the foundation, arriving earlier than expected. The subject line read, "Documentation and Next Steps, Private Beneficiary Foundation." Tamara sat on the edge of her bed, suddenly nervous. What if there was a catch? What if this was all some elaborate mistake? Taking a deep breath, she opened the email. At the top was a formal letter, confirming everything Diane had told her over the phone. Below that were several attachments, forms to fill out, information about the medical expense account, details about the educational grant, and at the very bottom a personal note. "Ms. Johnson, our donor was particularly moved by your dedication to both your mother and your nursing studies. He asked that I convey one additional message. The most valuable resource we have is each other. Thank you for the excellent breakfast and for reminding me of that truth." Tamara read the message 3 times, trying to imagine Keanu Reeves saying those words. The same man she'd watched in movies for years had sat in her section, eaten her recommended breakfast, and decided she was worth investing in. As she finally lay down to sleep, Tamara felt something she hadn't experienced in months, hope unfolding like a flower in her chest, fragile but undeniable. The next 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind of paperwork, phone calls, and disbelief that occasionally still hit Tamara like a physical wave. Each morning she half expected to wake up and discover it had all been an elaborate dream. But the emails from Diane remained in her inbox. The foundation's check had cleared with the landlord, who suddenly became much friendlier, and her mother's new medications, previously denied by insurance for being experimental, were already showing promising results. Today marked another milestone. Her first day back at nursing school after a 6-month hiatus. Tamara stood in front of the bathroom mirror, smoothing down her freshly pressed blouse, a small splurge from the thrift store downtown. Her hair was pulled back into a neat bun, and she'd applied just a touch of mascara and lip gloss. The face that looked back at her seemed different somehow. The dark circles under her eyes had faded, and there was a lightness in her expression that had been missing for too long. "You look beautiful," her mother said from the doorway, maneuvering her wheelchair with practiced ease. Lisa was having one of her good days, the new medication regimen already improving her energy levels. "Ready for your big return?" Tamara nodded, though her stomach fluttered with nerves. "I think so. The academic advisor said I can still graduate on time if I take an extra class this semester and one over the summer." "You'll do wonderfully," Lisa assured her, reaching out to squeeze her daughter's hand. "Just think, a year from now, you'll be Nurse Johnson." The title still felt distant, like something that might happen to someone else. But for the first time in years, it also felt possible. "I'd better get going," Tamara said, checking her watch. "Don't want to be late on the first day back." "You sure you'll be okay? Amy isn't coming until noon." Amy was the part-time caregiver they'd been able to hire with the foundation's support. Another life-changing development that gave Tamara peace of mind while she was at school, or work. "I'll be fine," Lisa insisted, waving her off. "Got my books, my phone, and Judge Judy at 10. What more could a woman want?" Tamara laughed, grabbing her backpack, new, replacing the tattered one that had been held together with safety pins and hope. "Call if you need anything. I'll have my phone on vibrate." The community college was a 30-minute bus ride away. As Tamara settled into her seat, she pulled out the folder containing her class schedule and campus map. It felt strange to be going back, to be reclaiming the dream she'd reluctantly set aside when her mother's condition worsened and the bills piled up. She'd kept in touch with a few classmates during her absence, mostly through social media, but she wondered how many familiar faces she'd see today. Nursing was a competitive program with limited spots. Her advisor had told her it was unusual for them to hold a place for a student who had to withdraw mid-semester. When Tamara had asked why they'd made an exception for her, the woman had simply smiled and said, "Sometimes we receive compelling reasons to be flexible." The bus pulled up to the college stop 15 minutes before her first class. Tamara thanked the driver, a habit from her mother's teachings, and stepped onto the campus with a deep breath. The familiar buildings and walkways welcomed her back, the autumn leaves crunching beneath her feet as she made her way toward the health sciences building. Outside the classroom, a small group of students had already gathered. Tamara scanned their faces, relief washing over her when she spotted a familiar one. Tamara. The voice belonged to Vicky, a fellow nursing student she'd studied with last year. "Oh my God, it is you. I heard you might be coming back." Before Tamara could respond, Vicky had pulled her into a tight hug. "We missed you." The study group wasn't the same. The warmth of the welcome caught Tamara off guard. She'd worried about fitting back in, about explanations she'd have to give for her absence. Instead, she found herself surrounded by friendly faces and genuine delight at her return. "How's your mom doing?" Vicky asked as they took seats next to each other. "Last time we talked, things were pretty rough." Tamara hesitated, unsure how much to share. The foundation had emphasized discretion, not secrecy, about the source of the funds. "She's doing better," she said carefully. "We found a new treatment that's helping, and I've got some financial aid that made it possible for me to come back to school." "That's amazing," Vicky replied, her smile wide and sincere. "I'm so happy for you both." As more students filed in and the professor began setting up at the front of the room, Tamara felt a strange doubling of time, as if she were simultaneously her present self and the stressed, exhausted woman who'd sat in a similar classroom 6 months ago, knowing it would be her last day of classes for the foreseeable future. The professor, Dr. Chen, caught her eye and nodded with a small smile of recognition. He'd been understanding when she'd had to withdraw, even offering to let her make up work if her situation improved. Now, as he began his welcome to the advanced pathophysiology class, Tamara felt a surge of determination. This time she would finish what she started. The 3-hour lecture passed quickly, Tamara's pen moving steadily across her notebook as she absorbed information about immune responses and inflammatory processes. When class ended, she had 5 pages of neat notes and a renewed sense of purpose. "Tamara, could you stay for a moment?" Dr. Chen called as students began packing up. She approached his desk, wondering if there was additional work she needed to make up. "It's good to have you back," he said, straightening a stack of papers. I was sorry to hear about your mother's health challenges. Thank you, she replied. Things are looking up now. He nodded, then reached into his briefcase. I wanted to let you know about this opportunity. He handed her a brochure. The hospital is starting a new scholarship program for nursing students interested in neurodegenerative disease care. Given your personal experience with MS, I thought you might be a perfect candidate. Tamara stared at the colorful pamphlet, describing a program that would provide not just tuition assistance but also guaranteed clinical placements in neurology units and mentorship from specialized nurses. The application deadline is next month, Dr. Chen continued. I'd be happy to write you a recommendation letter. Thank you. Tamara managed, her mind already racing with possibilities. I'll definitely apply. As she left the classroom, she felt a strange sense of alignment, as if pieces of her life that had seemed hopelessly scattered were suddenly falling into place. The burden that had weighed her down for so long was lifting, allowing her to see beyond day-to-day survival to a future with real possibility. Her next class wasn't until 1 o'clock, giving her time to visit the campus cafe for lunch. As she waited in line for a sandwich, her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Amy arrived early. We're having a great chat. How's school so far? Tamara smiled, typing back, Great. Dr. Chen told me about a special scholarship for students interested in MS and similar conditions. Applying next week. She added a heart emoji before sending, something she'd rarely done before. It felt right, though. This new lightness deserved expression. With her sandwich and coffee in hand, Tamara found a quiet table by the window. As she ate, she watched other students rushing between classes, laughing with friends hunched over laptops. Normal college life, something that had seemed so distant just weeks ago. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Gloria at the diner. Just heard the news from Mr. H. So proud of you, honey. We'll work around your school schedule. P.S. That movie star came back today, asked if you were working. Tamara nearly choked on her coffee. Keanu had come back? Looking for her? She quickly typed back, What? What did he say? Gloria's reply came almost immediately. Just asked if you were on shift. Told him you'd gone back to school. He smiled and said, Good. Left another big tip. Think you've got a fan. A strange warmth spread through Tamara's chest. It wasn't just that he remembered her, though that was surprising enough. It was that he'd checked in, that he cared about what happened next in her story. For a moment, she considered rushing back to the diner, hoping to catch him if he was still filming nearby. But what would she say? Thank you seemed wildly inadequate for someone who had fundamentally changed the trajectory of her life. Instead, she pulled out her laptop, another necessity the foundation had helped with, and opened the letter she'd written that first night, the one she'd never expected to deliver. With fresh determination, she began to edit it, removing sections that seemed too dramatic or personal in the light of day, adding details about her return to school and her mother's improving health. When she finished, she saved the document and opened her email. The foundation had provided a way to send messages to donors while maintaining their anonymity. It was time to use it. With steady fingers, she typed the foundation's contact address and a simple subject line. Thank you from Tamara Johnson. She attached her letter and added a brief note explaining who she was and asking them to forward her message to donor KR217, if possible. Before she could overthink it, she clicked send. Walking to her afternoon class, Tamara felt lighter than she had in years. The weight of constant worry that had become so familiar she'd almost stopped noticing it was lifting. In its place was something new. Possibility. The rest of the day passed in a blur of syllabi review, introductions, and the particular mix of excitement and anxiety that comes with new beginnings. By the time Tamara boarded the bus home, her backpack was heavy with textbooks and her mind was buzzing with information. As the bus rumbled through familiar streets, she found herself looking at the city with new eyes, the pawn shop where she'd reluctantly sold her grandmother's jewelry last year, the medical clinic where she'd spent countless hours advocating for her mother's care, the corner store where she carefully counted change to stay within budget. These landmarks of struggle remained, but they no longer defined her daily experience. When she arrived home, the apartment was filled with the unexpected smell of baking. She found her mother in the kitchen, her wheelchair pulled up to the counter where she was carefully removing cookies from a baking sheet. Amy, the caregiver, stood nearby, ready to assist but allowing Lisa her independence. "You're baking?" Tamara asked, setting down her backpack in surprise. Her mother hadn't felt well enough to bake in over a year. Lisa looked up with a smile that took years off her face. "Celebration cookies. First day of school tradition, remember?" Tamara's throat tightened with emotion. Throughout her childhood, no matter how tight money was, her mother had always baked cookies on the first day of school. The tradition had continued through high school and her first year of college, only stopping when Lisa's MS had made standing at the counter too painful. "I remember," Tamara said softly, crossing the kitchen to kiss her mother's cheek. "Amy helped with the heavy lifting," Lisa admitted, "but the mixing and measuring was all me. The new meds are really making a difference," Amy smiled. "Your mom's been telling me about your nursing studies. Sounds like you had a good first day back." "The best," Tamara confirmed, accepting a warm chocolate chip cookie from her mother. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually looking forward to studying tonight." After dinner, Tamara settled at the kitchen table with her pathophysiology textbook, her mind clearer and more focused than it had been in months. The constant background noise of financial worry had quieted, allowing her to fully engage with the material. Around 9 o'clock, her phone dinged with an email notification. Probably just a welcome message from one of her professors, she thought, glancing at the screen. Instead, she saw the foundation's name in the sender field. The subject line read, "Response from donor KR2 Sansven." Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't actually expected him to reply. With slightly trembling fingers, she opened the email. "Dear Ms. Johnson, your donor has received your message and asked me to convey his response. Thank you for your letter. The real gift has been seeing how you're using this opportunity. Keep going. The world needs healers like you. P.S. The eggs really were excellent. Warmest regards, Diane Bradshaw, Private Beneficiary Foundation." Tamara read the message 3 times, a smile spreading across her face. It was brief and simple, yet somehow perfect, acknowledging both the magnitude of what had happened and the ordinary human connection that had started it all. She set down her phone and turned back to her textbook, the words on the page coming into sharper focus. For the first time in years, the future wasn't just something to fear or endure, it was something to embrace. 3 years later, Tamara adjusted her graduation cap in the mirror, making sure the tassel hung at the proper angle. The nursing pin fastened to her white coat gleamed under the bathroom lights, a small symbol that represented thousands of hours of study, hundreds of clinical rotations, and countless moments of doubt and triumph. "Stop fussing," her mother said from the doorway, her smile reflected in the mirror behind Tamara. "You look perfect." Lisa Johnson sat tall in her motorized wheelchair, a newer model with better support and maneuverability than the old manual one. Her hair had more gray now, but her eyes were bright and clear. The experimental treatment covered by the foundation had slowed her MS progression dramatically, giving her back some of the energy and independence she'd lost in the years before. "I can't believe this is actually happening," Tamara said, turning to face her mother. "Sometimes I still think I'm going to wake up and find out it was all a dream." "Not a dream," Lisa replied, reaching out to straighten Tamara's collar. "Just proof that sometimes life surprises you in the best possible ways." The apartment they still shared looked different now. Fresh paint on the walls, new curtains, furniture that hadn't come from curbside pickups or discount outlets. Small upgrades they'd been able to afford as Tamara balanced reduced hours at the diner with her studies, supported by the foundation's continued assistance. A knock at the door interrupted their moment. "That'll be Vicky and her mom," Tamara said, grabbing her purse. "They're driving us to the ceremony, remember?" The graduation ceremony for Westside Community College's nursing program was held in the main auditorium, a space that felt impossibly grand, with its high ceilings and rows of plush seats. Tamara sat with her classmates in the front section, her stomach fluttering with a mix of excitement and disbelief. As the college president began his opening remarks, Tamara found herself scanning the audience. Her mother was in the accessible seating area near the front, beaming with pride. Next to her sat Gloria from the diner, who had become something of a surrogate aunt over the years. Mr. Henderson was there too, having closed the diner for the morning so the small staff could attend. Tamara's gaze continued moving through the crowd, a habit she'd developed at public events over the past 3 years. She never expected to actually see him, but she couldn't help looking. That familiar face that had changed everything with a simple act of kindness. Tamara Johnson, the dean called, her voice echoing through the auditorium. The sound of her name snapped Tamara back to the moment. She rose from her seat and walked across the stage, accepting her diploma with steady hands and a wide smile. As she moved the tassel from right to left, cheers erupted from her small but mighty support section. Summa cum laude, the dean announced. An additional honor Tamara had earned through late nights studying after long shifts at the diner. Fueled by determination and the knowledge that someone had believed in her potential enough to invest in it. After the ceremony, as graduates and families mingled in the reception area, Tamara felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Dr. Chen, her pathophysiology professor who had become a mentor over the years. "Congratulations," he said warmly. "The neurology department at University Hospital is still hoping you'll accept their offer." Tamara smiled, still amazed by the job offers she'd received after completing her specialized clinical rotations in MS care. "I'm still considering it," she said, "but I'm leaning toward County Memorial. Their patient population needs you more," Dr. Chen finished for her, nodding. "I thought you might say that." "Well, they'll be lucky to have you." He hesitated, then added, "There's someone who'd like to meet you, actually, a potential mentor at County." He gestured toward a tall woman in a crisp white coat standing near the refreshment table. "Dr. Wilson is the head of neurology there. She specifically asked about you after reading your final research paper on accessibility barriers in MS care." The next hour passed in a blur of introductions and conversations. Dr. Wilson turned out to be not just the department head but also the daughter of an MS patient, with a personal investment in improving care protocols. By the time they finished talking, Tamara had all but decided to accept the county memorial position. "We should celebrate," Lisa declared when they finally gathered their things to leave. "Lunch is on me," Gloria laughed. "Honey, lunch is on all of us. We made reservations at Panzano's." Tamara's eyes widened. Panzano's was the nicest restaurant in town, the kind of place where tablecloths were actual cloth and servers didn't have to wear name tags. "That's too expensive," she protested automatically, old habits dying hard despite their improved circumstances. "Not today it isn't," Mr. Henderson said firmly. "Today we celebrate properly." At the restaurant, seated at a large round table with a view of the garden, Tamara looked around at the faces of the people who had supported her journey. Her mother, whose determination through illness had taught her what real strength looked like. Gloria, who had covered countless shifts when exams loomed. Vicky, who had become her study partner and closest friend. Mr. Henderson, who had kept her job open and flexible through 3 years of changing class schedules. "I want to thank all of you," she said, raising her water glass in a toast. "I wouldn't be here without you." "Speech," Vicky called, grinning. Tamara shook her head but stood anyway. "I'm not going to make a big speech, but I do want to say something." She took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. 3 years ago, I was ready to give up on nursing school. I couldn't see a way forward with Mom's care needs and our financial situation. I was working double shifts and still falling behind on bills. She paused, the memory of that desperate time still vivid despite the distance. Then one morning, a customer came into the diner. Someone famous who could have just eaten his breakfast and left a nice tip. Instead, he saw beyond the uniform to the person wearing it. He heard what I wasn't saying when we talked about my mom and my dreams. And he decided to help. Lisa reached up to squeeze her hand, eyes glistening with tears. "What I've learned since then," Tamara continued, "is that kindness creates ripples. That one act of generosity didn't just help me pay rent or go back to school. It gave me the chance to focus on being a better student, which led to the scholarship for MS nursing, which connected me with Dr. Wilson, who wants me to help develop new protocols that could help patients like Mom across the country." She raised her glass higher. "So this toast isn't just to graduation. It's to kindness, to seeing people as people, not just roles they play in our lives, and to paying it forward whenever we can." The table raised their glasses, chorus of "Hear, hear," and "To kindness," rising around them. As the waiter approached to take their orders, Tamara's phone buzzed with an email notification. She glanced at it quickly, expecting a message from a classmate or perhaps the hospital about onboarding paperwork. Instead, She saw the familiar foundation address with a subject line that made her heart skip. Congratulations from Donor KR217. Excuse me for just 1 second, she said to the table, opening the email with slightly trembling hands. Dear Ms. Johnson, it read. Your donor received news of your graduation and asked me to convey his heartfelt congratulations. He has followed your progress through the Foundation's regular updates and is deeply impressed with your accomplishments. He asked me to share this message with you. 3 years ago, I saw someone with extraordinary potential facing extraordinary obstacles. Today, I'm honored to know that potential is being realized. Your dedication to your mother, your studies, and your future patients exemplifies the best of humanity. The world is better because you are in it, doing the work you were meant to do. Wishing you every success in your nursing career, KR217. Tears blurred Tamara's vision as she read the message. After all this time, he still remembered. Still cared enough to mark this milestone with her? Everything okay? Her mother asked quietly. Tamara nodded, quickly wiping her eyes. More than okay. I'll tell you later. The meal was everything a celebration should be. Good food, better company, and the sweet satisfaction of a journey completed. As they shared dessert and coffee, Tamara found herself thinking about the path ahead. Starting at County Memorial next month, the small house she and her mother were planning to rent, with wheelchair ramps and wider doorways. The MS support group Lisa had started hosting at the community center, providing the emotional support she'd once struggled to find. Later that evening, back at their apartment, Tamara sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open. Her graduation photos were uploaded to her social media, congratulatory messages flooding in from classmates and distant relatives alike. What are you working on now? Lisa asked, wheeling over with 2 mugs of tea. Surely you can take 1 night off from studying. Tamara smiled. Not studying, writing. She turned the screen slightly so her mother could see the document she'd been working on. The title read, The Ripple Effect, a Nursing Scholarship Fund. What's this? Lisa asked, setting down the mugs. Remember that talk I had with Mr. Peterson at the bank last week about the trust fund portion of the foundation grant? Tamara explained. There's a stipulation that after graduation, a percentage of the funds should be directed toward a charitable cause of my choosing. Lisa read a few lines of the document. You're starting a scholarship? Tamara nodded. For nursing students who are caregivers, people like me, who have family responsibilities on top of school. It won't be huge at first, maybe just books and supplies for 1 student per year. But eventually it could help someone just like you, Lisa finished, understanding dawning in her eyes. The ripples keep spreading. Exactly. Tamara took a sip of her tea, looking at the small corkboard they'd hung by the table years ago. Pinned to it was the white card that had started everything. Edges worn soft now from handling. The handwritten message slightly faded but still legible. Reference code KR217. Sometimes the universe sends help in unexpected ways. Do you think you'll ever meet him again? Lisa asked, following her daughter's gaze to the card. Tamara considered the question. Maybe. The world has a funny way of bringing people back together. She smiled, turning back to her scholarship proposal. But even if I don't, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure his kindness wasn't wasted. Outside their window, the city lights twinkled against the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, perhaps, a famous actor who preferred simple breakfasts and quiet conversation was reading about a newly graduated nurse who had once served him eggs, and perhaps he was smiling, knowing that kindness, like light, travels farther than we can see, illuminating places we might never visit ourselves.